Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Robert Sports Show. I'm your host, Robert. All right, college football week number uno. Last week was week 0. We went ahead and did 6 games from last week on that first opening weekend. We were 6-0 in straight-up picks, 5-1 against the spread, and 3-3 on the over-under. Gives us a total of 14-4, all 3 categories. I'm down with that. Let's keep that going for the rest of the season. So week 1. So typically what I'm going to do, if you're new to Robert Sports Show, welcome. Please subscribe to the channel. Please follow me on Twitter at Rob Sports Show. I do anywhere from 30 to 50 games typically. There are 130 FBS teams. I have in past done every game every week. That's a lot. I like to write things out and kind of give an idea what I'm going to talk about and how I'm going to do everything. So I may not be doing that this year. 30 to 50 is about my norm. I do CFL, I do NFL. I'll do all 17 weeks of the NFL regular season and playoffs. Same way with college football, I will be doing every week. Now in 2020, I didn't do as much because of everything going on. Games were switching every week, it seemed like. And I just wasn't personally kind of not into it as much. But this year, I'm going to do everything. I also do pro wrestling. I also do NASCAR here at Robert Sports Show. So we got the old gamut going on here. Sometimes I'll do other sports, NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA. Depends on what's going on in playoffs and whatnot. These typically ones I stick with my passions are pro wrestling and NASCAR. So week 1, we are starting off. First game here is a playoff caliber game. It is a playoff preview more than likely. And it could be one of the chances one of these teams not making playoffs because of this game. I'm talking about the 5th seed Georgia Bulldogs going up against the 3rd seed Clemson Tigers. We all know to make the playoffs, you got to have either one really damn good loss or no losses. Georgia, Clemson, we know 2 teams that make the playoffs almost every year for Clemson, it seems like. Maybe once they haven't, and then Georgia the last couple of years. This is actually the 65th time that these 2 schools have met. Georgia is 42-18-4. Georgia's won 6 of the last 7. Now, Clemson is favored by 3 at home with an over-under of 51.5. Now, as we've talked about the playoffs, the committee, good loss versus bad loss, if you're new to Robert Sports Show, I've actually done a video a couple years ago where basically I redid everything when it comes to college football. We don't have the playoff committee. We had 8 conferences, 16 divisions. Your conference championship is your division versus division. Your 8 playoff teams are your conference champions. You seed them, you go for your playoffs. I will stick a link to that video right up there. And what will happen is you can click on that as you're watching this show, or down below in the description, I'll also put a link of it. Or you can just obviously check it out on the Robert Sports Show as well. If you go onto the main page of Robert Sports Show and go down to where all the playlists are, there's going to be a NCAA college sports. It'll say NCAA college basketball, football. It'll also be in that playlist as well. So yeah, it was kind of the realignment. I spent some time on it. I actually thought it was a pretty good piece. But definitely check that out if you're new to Robert Sports Show. All right. The way Georgia has been playing the last couple of years, we all know, it's a new year, new teams. Trevor Lawrence is no longer in Clemson. He's in Jacksonville. Go Jaguars. Georgia, they just keep, it's the same as Alabama. They just keep trucking along. Clemson is favored by 3 at home. I'm actually giving that 3 to Georgia right off the bat here. I got Georgia winning, covering the 3, and I'm taking over on that 51.5. I think the whole good loss, I think Clemson would have lost to Georgia. As long as Georgia stays good, we're good. Now, what's going to happen is, and I can foresee this, I've actually thought about this game and this game alone, whoever loses this game, in my predictions, I'm picking Clemson to lose. So their only loss for the season, so they sweep the rest of the season, their only loss was Georgia in week 1. Okay, if Georgia is 1 loss or no losses, that's a great loss. But now if Georgia loses 4 games, 5 games, now it makes that loss look not as good. Now you have 3 or 4 one-loss teams whose one loss is better then Clemson's one loss, Clemson could be out of the playoffs. Vice versa. If Clemson wins this and Georgia loses, and then Georgia loses at Alabama, or even Georgia beats Alabama, now you've got one loss, so there's so many different scenarios that could happen after the season that we could come back to this one game and this could cost either one of these teams the playoffs. But I am picking Georgia there to upset Clemson and giving the 3 points to them. Next up, we have the 10 seed North Carolina Tar Heels versus the Virginia Tech Hokies. This is the 43rd median of all time for these schools. Virginia Tech 24-12-6. They've won 4 of the last 5. North Carolina is actually favored at home. Or favored on the road, They're favored by 5.5 on the road. I'm actually going with the 10 seed in North Carolina here to upset Virginia. I'm giving them the 5.5. I got them covering. And I'm taking the over on the 64. So North Carolina winning in Virginia, covering, and over on the 64. Next up, we have the South Florida Bulls versus the NC State Wolfpack. NC State is favored by 18. I got them winning, but I got the South Florida. I got the Bulls covering at 18 and under on the 59. Next up, this also could be one of those matchups, kind of like the first game. We have SEC versus ACC. We have number 1 seed Alabama Crimson Tide versus the 14 seed Miami Hurricanes. 18th median all time between these two schools. Alabama dominated 14-3 overall, 11 of the last 12. Crimson Tide are favored by 18.5. I've got them winning. I got them covering and making under on the 61.5. It is just crazy what Nick Saban has been able to do in Alabama over all these years, all these different players, everything that has happened when it comes to different players and whatnot. He just keeps chugging along, going out there, winning national championships. He can lose half his roster, and it's like, okay, and? Then he goes on to win. I had seen something on social media today I was looking for here about some of the players that he has had since 2018, and it's not anywhere near the top of the feed right now, so I put a screenshot of something. No, I guess I didn't. Oh well. So yeah, it was just mind-boggling the number of players since 2018 he's had go to the NFL. Not only go to the NFL, first-round picks in the NFL. But yeah, that machine called the Alabama Crimson Tide, they were going to chug along here, winning, covering the 18.5 and under on the 61.5. Next up, we have the 9 seed Notre Dame Fighting Irish versus the Florida State Seminoles. 11th median all time. Florida State 6-4. Notre Dame, last year, because of the shortened season, they played as part of the ACC. This year, they are back to their independent selves. So they have to literally either have undefeated, maybe a really, really good loss to get into the playoffs because they can't win a conference. But I got Notre Dame beating Florida State. They're favored by 7.5. I got them covering that and taking over on the 55.5. Next up, we got the 8 seed Cincinnati Bearcats, who do not like the current playoff status. As we know, last year they were undefeated, but yet they couldn't make the Final Four because they're not in the Power 5 conference. That's where that video that I've been talking about that I did of the realignment would come into handy, because you have your 8 conferences. They're all playoff eligible. You have those 8 are in the playoffs. If you win your conference, you're in. You win your division, you go to the conference finals. Boom, simple as that. It's all done on the field, all done in the stats, not people sitting in a room going, I like this team. No, I like this team. We think these teams should be in this team. No, they're not good enough. They don't play for the Power 5, that they're not equal to the Power 5, even though they were undefeated. Yeah, so I love for college football to get to that standing situation where they don't have to worry about the committees, the rankings, and all that stuff. That we settle it with win-losses and tiebreakers. They're playing Miami, Ohio Redhawks. This is the long standing rival, 125th meeting between these two schools. Miami, Ohio is 59, 58-7. Well, Cincinnati's won 14 straight. And I think they're going to take that to 15. Cincinnati's favored by 23. I got them winning, covering, taking over on the 15.5. But I have Miami of Ohio covering the 23. So I think I said that wrong. So Cincinnati is favored by 23. I got them winning, but I got Miami of Ohio covering the 23, and I'm taking under on the 15.5. We have Boise State Broncos versus the UCF Knights. First meeting ever between these two schools. UCF favored by 5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 69. Houston Cougars versus Texas Red Raiders. 32nd game all time these two schools have played. Houston is 18-13-1. Texas Tech has won 3 straight and 8 of the last 9. Houston is favored by 1.5 on the road. I am taking that 1.5, giving it to the home team, the Red Raiders. I got Texas Tech winning, covering, and over on the 65. We have the Marshall Thundering Herd versus the Navy Midshipmen. First time these two schools ever met. Marshall's favored by 2.5. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 47.5. Next up, with the Tulane Greenway versus the number 2 ranked Oklahoma Sooners. This is the second meeting ever between these two schools. Oklahoma won the first. Oklahoma is favored by 27. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 69. Now, as of 2025, Oklahoma and Texas will be joining the SEC. We are taking 2 powerhouse Big 12 schools and putting them into the SEC. How is this a good idea? I mean, come on. If you're Oklahoma and Texas, I'm sorry, look at Missouri. Missouri was in the Big 12. Missouri was part of the Big 8 back in the day. They used to win the Big 12 all the time. They go to the SEC, guess what? They're mediocre. Yeah, the first couple of years they won their division. They were in the finals against Alabama. They got beat. I think this is a bad move by these two schools. The more schools, powerhouse schools you have in one conference, the SEC in this case, they're going to beat up on one another. I mean, you've got Alabama, you've got LSU, you've got Georgia, you've got Auburn. You add these two schools plus the other schools that are already there. All they're going to do is eliminate each other from the playoffs. You literally could have 6 one-loss teams in the SEC because they beat up on each other. I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea, but hey, who am I? So I got Oklahoma covering 27 over on the 69. Because that's the thing right now, Big 12, you see a 69, most people are like, oh, hell no. In Big 12, they're going over. They're not going to be able to do that in the SEC because of the defenses. Same way with the next matchup here. 23rd ranked Louisiana Raging Cajun versus the 21st ranked Texas Longhorn. Third ever meeting, Texas is 2-0. Texas favored by 8. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 58. Next up, we have a Big Ten matchup that could be playoff implications as well. We have the 4th seed Ohio State Buckeyes versus the Minnesota Gophers. 53rd meeting between these two schools. Ohio State has won 45. They're 45-7. They've won 10 straight. So, Ohio State, more than likely, if they win Big Ten, they're in the playoffs every year. What if Minnesota beats them? Is Minnesota, as a one-loss to Ohio State, or Ohio State's one loss beating Minnesota, is that going to be a quality loss? Yes and no. I mean, Minnesota could have a great season. This, again, when you look at the committee, okay, so Georgia's got 1 loss, and their loss is Clemson. Ohio State's got 1 loss, and their loss is Minnesota. Who are you putting in? I know it depends on what the other teams do, exactly. But that's why I really want them to get to the situation where we don't have to deal with that. It's all, hey, you win you win your games, you go up your division, you're division champions, you make the conference title game, and there you go. So Ohio State got them winning, covering the 14 and under and 64.5. Some chance in hell they're going to lose. Again, 45-7 in 53 games. I'm taking under in that 64.5. Next up, another huge Big Ten matchup. I mean, this is another matchup that could affect the Big Ten championship. 19th ranked Penn State Nittany Lions versus 12th ranked Wisconsin Badgers. 20th meeting all time with these two schools. Penn State's actually 10-9, but they've won 4 straight and 6 of the last 7. Wisconsin's favored by 5.5 at home. For the most part, Penn State has had Wisconsin's number. I'm giving that 5.5 to Penn State. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 50. Western Michigan Broncos versus the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan is undefeated in lifetime versus the Broncos. They are favored by 17. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 67. Next up is the Michigan State Spartans versus the Northwestern Wildcats. 60th time these two schools have met. Michigan State is favored by, Northwestern is favored by 3. All time, Michigan State is 39-20. They've won the back-to-back games, the last 2. Since Northwestern is at home, they're favored by 3. Sometimes in certain games, especially games like this, I'm just not seeing that 3 points for the home team. So I'm giving that 3 to Michigan State. I mean, they've had their number for the most part in the last couple of years. I got Michigan State winning, covering, and over on the 45. The University of Alabama Blazers versus the Jackson State Gamecocks. UAB is favored by 14.5. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 47.5. Florida Atlantic Owls versus the 13th ranked Florida Gators. Gators are 3-0 versus the Owls all time. The Gators are favored by 23.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 52. Next up, we have the Duke Blue Devils versus the Charlotte 49ers. Duke beat Charlotte last year 53-19. In 2020. That was last year, yeah. Duke is favored by 6.5. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 60.5. Next up, University of Texas San Antonio Roadrunners versus the Illinois Fighting Illini. The Illini are favored by 5.5 at home. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 49. Next up, the Syracuse Orange versus the Ohio Bobcats. This is the third meeting all-time versus these two schools. 1916, 1921, and 2021. It's been 100 years. There ain't nobody left that went to that game. Syracuse is favored by 1.5. I'm giving that 1.5 to the home team. I got Ohio winning, covering, and under on the 55.5. Kent State Golden Flashes versus 6th seed Texas A&M Aggies. Aggies favored by 28.5. I got them winning, covering. I got Texas A&M, Kent State covering and over on the 67.5. Nevada Wolfpack versus the California Golden Bears. 26th game all time with these two schools. California is 22-3, but they've lost 2 straight. California at home is favored by a field goal. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 52.5. The 1-0 San Jose State Spartans versus the 15th ranked USC Trojans. It's weird. It's week 1, and this is their second game because they were in week 0. 5th game all time between these two schools. USC is 4-0. I got USC winning, covering the 14 and under on the 59.5. The Army West Point Black Knights versus the Georgia State Panthers. The last time these two schools met was in 2019. Georgia State won 28-21. Georgia State is favored by 2 at home. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 50. The Citadel Bulldogs versus the number 23 ranked Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. Coastal Carolina favored by 34.5. I got them winning, covering, under on the 54.5. East Carolina Pirates versus the Appalachian State Mountaineers. 32nd game all time with these two schools. East Carolina has won 6 straight. Appalachian State is favored by 10.5. They have all time 19-12 Appalachian State versus the Pirates. They're at home. I'm giving the 10.5 Appalachian State. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 57.5. Fresno State Bulldogs versus the 11th ranked Oregon Ducks. Ducks are 7-2 all-time versus the Bulldogs. Ducks are favored by 20.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 63.5. Next up, we have the Stanford Cardinal versus the Kansas State Wildcats. The only matchup previously of these two schools in 2016, Stanford won 26-13. Kansas State is actually favored by 2.5. In this instant, I am giving the 2.5 to the road team. The Stanford Cardinal, I think they're a better team. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 53. 16th ranked LSU Tigers versus the UCLA Bruins. LSU is favored by 3. I get them winning, covering, and under on the 66. Central Michigan Chippewas versus the Missouri Tigers. Missouri Tigers are favored by 15. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 60.5. The Louisville Cardinal versus the Ole Miss Rebels. The Rebels are favored by 10. I get them winning, covering, under on the 75.5. The Akron Zips versus the Auburn Tigers. Auburn won versus the Zips back in 1988, 42-0. Here they are favored by 36.5. I got them winning, covering, and under on the 55. And last but not least, we have out of the Big Ten, 2 ranked teams. Again, part of those Big Ten teams that could affect each other's playoffs. We have the 17th ranked Indiana Hoosiers versus the 18th ranked Iowa Hawkeyes. 78th meeting between these two schools. Hawkeyes are 45, 28, and 4. Iowa's won 3 straight and 7 of the last 8. Iowa's favored by 3.5. I got them winning, covering, and over on the 45. Now, when it comes to my picks here, this is all for entertainment purposes only. If you so desire to use my picks and go bet money, good luck to you. If you win big, congratulations. Please comment below. If you lose big, I'm sorry. This is entertainment purposes only. Good luck next time. I have had people message me and say they have used my picks and betted and they actually won, so I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I just do this for fun. I don't bet money on anything. I've never bet money on this. NFL, I'll be talking about my fantasy team, and CFL, I'll talk about my fantasy team. So definitely check those videos out next week, week 1. We'll have week 5 at CFL later on this week. NASCAR previews. We got the NASCAR Cup Series playoff preview coming up. We have the race previews. If you're a NASCAR fan and you're new to Robert Sports Show, I preview the Cup Series races, Xfinity and the Truck Series, occasionally an ARCA Series race. There's been a few races I've missed over time, so it's not every race is on here, but most of them this year. Now, Super Speedway Racing, obviously, we've seen what Daytona was. Talladega back in the spring. Brett Keselowski won. Called it. So, yeah, that definitely was impressive for me. But, yeah, 33 games in week 1 of CFL. College football, NCAA. Hey, I'm rusty. You know what? It's preseason here. So, definitely check this all out. If you have anything else, thanks for watching the Robert Sports Show. Don't just have a great day. Have a spiffy day. Robert Sports Show, your YouTube leader in sports channel content.